This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
The Sixth Doctor from the iconic British television series Doctor Who. Colin Baker on this edition of Conversations. Colin Baker is an accomplished British actor whose career has spanned television, film, and theater. He is quite well known for his television role as the Sixth Doctor in the long-running cult classic Doctor Who. He is also known for his portrayal as Paul Moroney in the BBC series Brothers. Add to that an array of film and stage roles, and it's clear to see Baker has carved out quite an impressive career. He continues to display his talents as an actor, composer, and columnist. And we're glad to have him on this edition of Conversations. Thank you for joining us.
Very great pleasure.
Tell me, how did you get the role as the Sixth Doctor Who?
Wow, now there's a story. It's interesting because there are two roles that have defined my career, and both of them I got by chance. In the case of the Doctor, I was called up by my agent who said, "You've been offered a part in Doctor Who." At the time, Peter Davison was playing the Doctor. And it's 3 episodes and it fits in perfectly with the 2 jobs that you're now doing. And it's right in the right place. And I said to him, "Oh, that's a shame." He said, "Why?" He said, "Because I read somewhere that they never cast the Doctor from anybody who's been in the show before." And I said, "Well, that means I'll never be Doctor Who." And my agent paused slightly and said, "Well, they're not going to ask you, are they, to be Doctor Who?" Nice to have that confidence, isn't it? And so I thought, oh, well, he's quite right, probably. And I played the part of Maxil, who was a kind of glorified guard. He was the head of security. And one of my jobs was to shoot Peter Davison, who played the Doctor. And it was the cliffhanger at the end of the episode, is he dead? And back in those days, we used to rehearse television. So you'd have a week in a rehearsal room, and then you go and record it over 2 days in a studio. It's quite different now. It's done filmically now. And in rehearsal, the producer comes to watch a run, at the end of which he came to me and said, "What's this programme called?" I said, "Doctor Who." "Oh, it's not Maxil then." I said, "What are you saying?" He said, "Well, you're playing it as if you're the most important person on the set." I said, "Well, in Maxill's eyes, he is. And this doctor's an irritant. And he's just, he's doing his job, which is disposing of an irritant." And he said, "Well, could you leave a little bit of room for the Doctor?" And I said, "Are you saying you want me to tone it down?" He said, "You'd oblige me if you did." I said, "Oh," and he said, "It's the most arch performance I've ever seen." I believe in giving it, and then you can always take away.
Right.
If you give a lot, the producer, director can take it away.
Right.
If you don't give anything, it's very hard to build up. Anyway, as a result of that, the producer and I got on very well. We laughed a lot about it. And I did what he asked. I allowed Peter Davison to do his acting very generously. And then a couple of weeks later, the producer and I were both at the wedding of a mutual friend. And we spent one of those days, occasionally in life, you're on, you're not, but you're alive and awake and well.
Sure.
And we spent the day laughing about stuff. And he tells a story, not mine to tell, but I'm going to, that he went home and said to his partner, "I think I found my new doctor." I was unaware of this until he called me up a couple of months later and said, "Could you pop in and see me? Let's have lunch." I thought, okay. And he said, "Peter's leaving." I said, "Oh, who's going to play the part?" And he said, "Well, I was hoping you would." Oh. So I'd done my audition by playing Maxil as if he was the star of the show. Goes to show, doesn't it? Yeah. And I didn't have to audition for it. I didn't have to film test for it. I had to go and meet the head of series and serials, who was the guy on the top floor. And when I went into his office, he was watching a TV screening of a cricket match that I had been listening to in the car on the way there. So we talked cricket, a great mystery to all your viewers, for 10 minutes. he turned to the producer and said, "He'll do." And that's how I got the part.
And the rest is history.
Unconventional. I mean, I'd been up for parts which were 2 or 3 scenes and had to go through 3 meetings with people and auditions for it. The biggest part I ever got, I was offered. Funny old business hours.
Interesting. Well, what did that do to your career, getting that role? What did it do for your career?
It was already all right, because 10 years earlier I'd played a key character in British television. So people knew who I was. But to get a second bite of the cherry, if you like, and a part which is, arguably one of the best parts on television. There are now 13 of us who've laid claim to it, but it's the part, if you're a British actor, that unless you want to studiously avoid popularity and fame, you would grab with both hands.
What has been the key to that show lasting so long? What's made Doctor Who such a long-lasting program?
A question I've been asked many times, and if I could answer it, I'd go and make TV programs. But the only answer I can give is that throughout the history of storytelling, the story of the Lone Ranger, the story about the man who comes into your town, Magnificent Seven, the guy who you're having a horrible time, this one person comes in, who is he? He solves your problems, he doesn't want anything back from you, and he just rides off into the mist. I mean, that was, I don't know whether it was the intention of the programme, but that's what it evolved to be. And some people have even suggested it's quasi-religious. We're all looking for someone to solve our problems for us, and we find them in different ways. Some of them, a lot of people find it in church. Some people subliminally find it through watching programs like Doctor Who, which champion the underdog and which show you that life is worth living. I mean, I'm treating it more seriously than perhaps some people would as an issue. But in order to explain the popularity of that program, you have to accept that it's about that. It's about, if I had £1 for every person who said to me I was going through a really hard time and I watched your doctor and you helped me get through. There's a guy who has written a book about autism, and he's on the spectrum himself. And there's a chapter in it saying, what his life was like at school, sitting in the back row being taunted all the time, and he would look forward to going home and watching his Doctor Who tapes. Now, if I'm part of a show that can do that, it's remarkable. But whether you can reproduce it, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's to do with the huge success now of all the Marvel and DC comic stuff. It's about superpowers, super people. Right. It's about saving us. It's a fascinating study. I'm surprised somebody hasn't done a university course on it.
Yeah, interesting. Were you surprised at the success that Doctor Who has had in the United States?
No, because you're quite bright over here.
Right. We like to think so.
So why you wouldn't like something we like, I don't know. I mean, I know we are two nations divided by a common language.
Right.
As somebody once said. But, I mean, clearly we're not up there with Star Trek and Star Wars and all that.
Right.
Because it's a British TV programme. Right. But to understand that, well, since the first thing that I was asked to do when John Nathan Turner, the producer, asked me to play the part, before I'd seen a script, before we'd even discussed things like costume, he brought me over here to a convention in Miami where thousands of people were gathered there to see the new Doctor because it was such a big deal. Wow. So I knew from the word go that it was popular in the States. Wow. And again, it's people who are looking for all that same stuff that we were talking about earlier, all that escape from my life into another world I can believe in, with a benevolent chap travelling about in a blue police box. So no, there's an interesting difference between the fans, though. The American fans are much more I'm generalising horribly here.
Sure.
They're much more supportive of the programme. They're less likely to criticise. British fans, a small part of them, can be very critical. They can, because they almost feel they own the programme more than we, the actors. And as the years roll by and more actors play the part, you know, oh no, that doctor's quite wrong, or this doctor's better than that doctor. Whereas over here, you guys seem to have I say simpler in the right way of that word, not simple, but a clearer understanding that the whole thing is to be embraced, and they do embrace it. So you do feel loved when you come to an American convention, and I've been to quite a few, as you can imagine, over the years.
I'm sure. And speaking of that, so the latest Doctor Who is Jodie Whittaker, which is the first woman to play the role. What kind of response was there when that was announced?
Over the years at conventions, I've asked a crowded room, 400 or 500 people, what would you say to a woman doctor? Show of hands. And it's been evenly split. And more women than men didn't want a female doctor. I'd have thought women would have, been really on the side of a female doctor. And then it happened, and there was a lot of reaction to it. People claiming that boys needed a role model. Well, I don't see why a woman can't be a role model for boys, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. I think good people are role models.
Sure.
It's not gender specific.
Sure.
And anyway, the boys have had a role model for 50 years. Let the girls have one, if you have to be specific to gender. I've always thought it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's absurd that you have a character whose main characteristic is, instead of dying, he regenerates.
Right. His
molecules all reform as somebody else. Somebody with only one little bit that doesn't regenerate. I don't get that. I just don't get that. I welcomed it. Yeah. And lots of people I know and respect weren't very happy about it at all. Mm-hmm. And in the event, boy was I right, because Jodie is so good. Yeah. She has brought something to that character that none of us have ever brought, which is a kind of simple, warm, overpowering joy. I don't know if you've seen any of her stories, but she's just excited to be her and the Doctor and coping with it and loving it. I think it's just, a stunning performance. She's a very fine actress. And now it seems ridiculous, like all the LGBT things going on in casting and in Hollywood and in Britain. Mm-hmm. Once you start accepting it, you think, well, why haven't they done that before? Mm-hmm. There's no sense to it in, letting acting be the province solely of middle-class white people in Britain, or whatever the equivalent is over here. So I'm excited by the future, and I can't wait to see. Well, I hope she stays forever. Well, it's the first Doctor I've ever been attracted to. Yeah. None of those guys did it for me.
Well, I was going to certainly say she's certainly a beautiful woman. There's no question about that.
I haven't met her, but from all I hear, I think I hear that she's really lovely.
I haven't met her, but she's stunning. I saw her on television. Yeah. She's absolutely stunning. What made you want to be an actor?
Another long story. School. Shy boy, never said much. Glasses, studious. And every year my school did a Gilbert and Sullivan opera, all boys school. And two of my friends said, let's go and give it a go. And we were 12. So we were the girls in the chorus, the first one I did, which was whatever it was. And then the second one, I was cast in the female lead. I was Phyllis in Iolanthe. And I got a review in my school magazine that said, Colin Baker threw himself with great verve into the part of Phyllis and rarely strayed more than half an octave from the note. And at the time, I thought it was a good review. 20 years later, I looked up what octave was. So my acting chops were okay, but apparently the singing was a bit... And I've always been a bit errant. Even when I was at drama school, the music teacher there, I was playing Johnny One Note. You know the song, Johnny One Note?
No.
You know, da, 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 da. And then right at the end, Johnny sings his one note, which is whatever. And I was cast in that part because I thought they were safe. And at the end of it, our music teacher, who was an MD in the theatres all around London, said, he had a very high-pitched voice, "Colin, that was a lovely note. It was the wrong note, but it was a lovely note." So anyway, back to school, Gilbert and Sullivan, and suddenly, the following year I plays Rose Maybud in Ruddy Gore, and then my voice broke, and I played Pish Tush in The Mikado, and then we had exams and I couldn't do any more. And I loved it. It was finally something that I could do. I couldn't do debating and all those other things you had to do at my school. But give me some lines and somebody else's, put me in a costume, and I was flying. Yeah. And then, as I was approaching the time for university, my father, who was a successful businessman, said, "Colin, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I'd like to go to Oxford or Cambridge," I said. And I could have done, I had the grades. Mm-hmm. And when I'm there, I'd like to join Ouds or Footlights, which are the two kind of student drama bodies in those universities, and see if I could do a bit of acting. And the way that fathers of that generation did, it kind of... You start in the solicitor's office on Monday. It was a firm of solicitors that worked for his firm, and he thought I should be a lawyer. So on the following Monday, I was started in the solicitor's office, because 18-year-olds in 1961 weren't quite as rebellious or strong as they are now. And I did 5 years of that. And as I was approaching my finals, all the time I joined amateur drama groups and was doing lots of that. And my father had a heart attack and a stroke when he was 49, and spent the rest of his life, sadly, not quite a vegetable, but not there. Not my dad, he'd gone. And in the words of the song, I thought, is that all there is? Is that all there is? And I thought, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. So I walked away from my finals. I'd done half of them. And I auditioned for drama schools. And I got into one. And I went there. And when I left, the principal had us all in one by one into his study. And he said to me, "Colin," he said, "you clearly love acting. And you have a certain talent. But have you thought that," again, it was that whole middle class thing, because at that time it was very fashionable to be, streetwise and, not speak properly and be angry, right. The angry young man bit. Right. He said, you would make a very good stage manager. Have you thought of going into stage management? I said, no. I crept out. And another friend of mine who was in my year went in after me and got exactly the same. And his name is David Suchet, who played Poirot on British television for 15 years and is one of the most successful actors in Britain. So at least he got it wrong with two of us. But in those days, rebellious students were the ones who got the attention, right. Whereas the ones who grafted, me, David, a few others, didn't. But I'm glad to say we survived.
You had a fair amount of success, I guess, rather early in your career with Brothers, which was a hit television show on the BBC.
Yep.
And you were telling me off camera, it was sort of like our version of Dallas and J.R. Ewing and that kind of thing.
It was Dallas without the money.
Dallas without the money.
It was It was a haulage company, lorries, you know, that went public, which meant that they had been a family company and they sold their shares on the stock market.
Right.
So the bank put a director in, me.
Okay.
And that director slowly turned it into an international business from which he profited.
Okay.
Not criminally, unlike JR.
Right.
A bit dodgy. But I was voted the most hated man in Britain in 75.
Okay.
And that was great fun to do.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was one occasion, I used to get accosted a lot. People with umbrellas hitting me and telling me I was unpleasant. There was one time when I went into an off-licence, which was a shop that sells alcohol, and the man said to me, "Are you that Paul Merony?" I said, "Yeah." And he got a Nebuchadnezzar of champagne, which is a 4-bottle, big bottle of champagne. "Thank you." I said, "Why?" He said, "I watched you on television. You treated everybody appallingly. You got your way of everything. You trampled over all their lives. You treated your staff abominably." And I thought, I could do that. And I did. And I had one shop when I started, and now I've got 20. And I owe it all to you. Thank you. It's a dubious compliment, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is indeed.
Hopefully it meant I was acting the part well enough. Yeah, the Brothers was, I mean, there's 2 times in my life when I've been recognised. One for being the most hated man, and the second time around 10 years later for being perhaps the most loved, which is quite sweet, really.
Interesting. So you've been on both ends of the spectrum, so to speak.
Yep.
Do you enjoy doing, I know you've done theater too, do you enjoy doing theater or do you enjoy television and film more?
They both have very different rewards at the end of them. I enjoy both. If I've done 10 years of mainly theatre, I want to go and do some television. Mm-hmm. And I've done a lot of theatre in the last 10 years and not much television. So I would like to do some again. But I have to acknowledge that I'm now a man in his mid-70s and people want to see younger, prettier people on their screen. And the parts are fewer. Hopefully by surviving, right, all the other 70 and 80-year-olds will pass away and they'll have to employ me again.
You, these days, are also, you do a lot of writing, as I understand it, you're a columnist?
I am.
Tell me about that.
I wrote a letter to my local newspaper in Buckinghamshire, where I live in England. And the editor wrote back to me saying, "Do you fancy a column?" It's the old, right place, right time thing. Right. Like both the roles I played on television came through the back door. And this was the same. So I started writing that 25 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I've not missed a week since then.
What are your columns about?
Whatever I want them to be. This week's, for instance, will be about an experience I had on a plane coming in here. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting one. I'll share it with you. Sitting on the plane waiting to take off, a man gets up, goes up to the stewardess and says, "I've just had a phone call. My mother's ill. Can I get off?" So they opened the door and let him off. And as he was getting off, she said to him, "Have you checked any luggage in?" And he said, No, it's just this," with his handbag, and went. And nothing was said. And I said, "Excuse me, he just overheard that. How do you know he hasn't checked it?" "Well, he said so." I said, "You've got all that security out there, and you let someone get off a plane who may have luggage in the hold?" And other people around were going, "Oh, yeah." He said, No, they'll talk to him up at the up in the lounge, and if he had any luggage, they'd tell us." Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that was true, because
that's a good point.
As I got off, she said, "Well, we didn't blow up, did we?" I thought, no, but I mean, part of me is cross with myself for not insisting. But when you're surrounded by other passengers who want to go to Pensacola,
right,
they don't want me insisting that the luggage hold is examined. But the security we go through to get on that plane, and someone just to slide off at the last minute, I just thought was worthy of comment. So this week I'll write about that.
Interesting.
You
So
know,
just
it's,
kind of what you observe and what you...
Yeah.
Are you opinionated politically very much in your columns? Or?
Not very. I try and avoid the opportunity for people to identify my political affiliation. Only because I don't have much of one, really, and also because I might lose half my audience.
Good point.
Because some people are very committed. I mean, I will say other things that, like I'm very anti-guns, but most of my audience is not America, so that's all right when I'm writing.
Right.
And I'm very anti-blood sports and the maltreatment of animals, and I'm quite active in that. So I don't mind people who like kicking cats not liking my television anymore, because that doesn't bother me. Right. But politics, to be honest, over my life, I've voted for 3 different parties at various times, so I'm not hyper-political.
Interesting. I've got about 2 minutes left. What are you up to these days besides writing the column?
Besides writing my column, and I've written a book of short stories called Gallimaufry, which is due to be republished. I'm going to add some more to it. And they've anthologized my column as well, my newspaper column, into 3 volumes. I tend to do a lot of those programs where people who used to be famous are put in uncomfortable situations because it entertains the viewers. Yeah. And I was in the Australian jungle, a program called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I did that about 4 years ago. Last year I did a caravanning program where myself and 4 other celebrities were stuck in a motorhome driving around Britain, filmed as I drove into things and got punctures, and we failed to negotiate roads properly. It's
real quick, where can someone find you on social media?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter.
You are on Twitter?
And I misunderstood Twitter. When it started, I thought...
I've got about 10 seconds.
I thought you had to hide yourself. But in fact, so I call myself Sawbones Hex, which means 6th Doctor. But nobody gets that, so they don't know whether I'm there.
They don't know.
No.
You're tweeting away. Nobody knows.
Well, they do know. The 10,000 who follow me.
That's
90,000 who follow me do know.
It's a pleasure talking to you. I wish you all
very
the very
nice
best.
talking to you as well. Thank you.
He was the 6th Doctor Who, Colin Baker, our guest on this edition of Conversations. By the way, you can see more of our conversations online at WSRE.org and also on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Take wonderful care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.